Bonjour. Alors, aujourd'hui, on va se concentrer. Attendez, parce que je vais rechercher la page. Aujourd'hui, on va commencer avec 6B. I don't know why I keep saying 6 in Spanish the last couple of lessons. Anyway, it's really weird. We're doing 6B and 6B1 today for French 1002. And if you're following along in the presentation, then if you want to be following along in your book too, then great. That's page 240 to start. And I don't think there are any announcements. I'm going to check. I checked yesterday and there were a couple of compositions in when I checked, and then I didn't check later in the evening. But presumably everybody's composition has been turned in, the rough draft, so I'll be going and checking to see all of those tonight, and I'll email you back confirmation that I got it okay, and I hope to have those graded by tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. So let's dig in. I think that's the only announcement. If you have any other questions, then obviously please email me or come to office hours. Again, these recordings from now on will be posted on my YouTube page, and we won't be having necessarily a structured class in Blackboard Collaborate. I'm going to be there at our assigned time, which is Mondays at 3 p.m., and I will stay there for the duration. I'll be doing other things, so if you get there and I don't notice that you've come in, then please yell. But anybody who would like to go through the whole lesson in a structured way, we can totally do that. If you just need some extra help on anything, then I'm there for that. If you just want to view it as kind of an extra office hour, then that's fine too. But because of all the problems with Blackboard Collaborate, I'm going to do our recordings on Camtasia from now on and just post them directly to YouTube. So the uploads take a little while. I think I told you last week. Those will be posted by midnight or so every Monday. And I guess that's it. So come to the class session if you can and would like to. And of course, come to office hours if and when you're able also. And please grab me if you would like to get together outside of any of those hours. I'm sure we could find time to get together for additional help or questions or anything. So, voilà. Alors, on va commencer avec le vocabulaire à la page 240. We're on 240 with vocab for clothing and shopping and la mode, fashion, etc. So there weren't too many extra things I wanted to mention with these. What you might do is pause the video and pull up this page and review for a little bit. And there were just a couple of things I was going to mention. One thing is an anorak. This can be a ski jacket or a parka. It can also be kind of a, it doesn't have to be insulated. So it can also be just kind of a hooded raincoat. You might hear people say anorak for those. And you might hear another thing. I'm going to pull up my little sticky. Another thing you might hear for... I forgot to make my font bigger. Attendez. Voilà. Bon. Another thing you might hear for a hooded rain jacket, like we all have, you guys all have, you know, North Face jacket or whatever, is kawe. And these are written this way. So a kawe is also kind of an anorak. It's a, you know, a thinner rain jacket that has a hood. Sometimes they zip up, sometimes they don't. Often they fit into themselves into their own pocket or something. So that's just kind of an interesting side point. A kawe is named kawe because the first company that people paid attention to that made those was kawe. So kind of like we have words like Kleenex and Q-tip and all those. There's a name for those, but I forget what they are. where you're using the brand name as the noun. Kawe works the same way. So if you hear somebody say something about a kawe, it's one of those hooded jackets. A couple of things that I did want to underline. Be careful with any kind of pants. In English, all of our pants are plural. In French, they're all singular. So you have here un short for a pair of shorts, n'est-ce pas? Vous avez à gauche là un jean for a pair of jeans, un pantalon for a pair of pants. So that's kind of interesting, and that could possibly pose a problem at some point down the line if you don't pay attention. Voila. Otherwise, this is mostly memorization, and they don't give it to you. I thought they gave it to you right here. Il vous donne ici porter. Porter is how we say to wear something. So porter. If you want to say, so porter, to wear. If you want to talk about putting something on, then that's mettre. D'accord? So you've learned about mettre in the past, some of you, who, as any other kind of putting. If I put something on the table, I can use mettre. If I put something on my head, I can use mettre. And now, if I put on clothes, it's mettre also. And then these are not to be confused with s'habiller, one of our reflexive verbs, to s'habiller. Wow. Well, that's to wear also. Je vais mettre en, s'habiller en. So this is also to wear or to dress oneself. So it's a little closer to dress oneself if you want to think about it that way. It might avoid confusion for you later. So to dress yourself or to dress oneself. So you say, oh, and I'm going to put parentheses around the en, or to get dressed. That's what I kept trying to say. It was eluding me. So to dress oneself or to get dressed. D'accord? So if you're going to go get dressed, je vais m'habiller. D'accord? If I'm going to wear a specific thing, je vais porter. Je vais porter un jean, je vais porter mes baskets, etc. If I'm going to put something specific on, je mets mon pantalon bleu, ou je mets mon pull en laine, ou quoi que ce soit. So be careful with these three, and try to keep them straight, and think of them with these definitions that I've given you here in the post-it more than other definitions you might find. These, I think, will keep you straight a little better than some other definitions you may find. Alors voilà. Alors on va changer un tout petit peu. Hopefully you've stopped at some point to look over your vocab. And I'm pulling this down a little bit more so we can see some more things at the bottom. You of course can see the whole thing on your page if you've got the book in front of you as well. Take a few minutes to review, and then we're going to practice with a blank page. Alors, so stop the video anytime and then restart in a few minutes. I can't find my page. So if you're back, I'm pulling up Vista one more time to go to the page. Oh wait, I know what. I downloaded it, that's why. It's like, wait, I thought I had it ready. And I do. There it is. So on this page, we're going to... I didn't mean to make it all blue. Okay. On this page, we're just going to try to pick out things that we saw and name what they are. So look at the picture and see how many things you can name without the book. So lots of different possibilities. Maybe you can name the colors, but you can't quite name the objects yet. Maybe you can name some of the objects, but not necessarily the colors. If you remember some of our verbs, then that's great too. D'accord? Alors juste pour souligner, on a quelques... Moi je vais simplement nommer quelques objets au pif, at random, n'est-ce pas? Alors ici, on avait déjà parlé du short, un short. We talked about this, un short au masculin singulier. A few people are wearing pants, un pantalon, n'est-ce pas? En fait, ici, c'est un tailleur, d'accord? Un costume, pardon, un costume. So a costume is a man's suit. We don't have any women's suits here in the picture, but a women's suit is a tailleur. Alors, vous avez un costume, un short, d'accord? Qu'est-ce que c'est que ça en violet, là? Qu'est-ce que vous avez ici en violet? Et ici, sur le monsieur, le monsieur qui travaille au magasin? Des cravates, d'accord? Des cravates. Et ici, avec la dame, qu'est-ce que vous avez en vert? En vert citron, quoi. Vous avez une robe, d'accord? Une robe. Qu'est-ce qu'il achète, le monsieur? Il achète un t-shirt, ou peut-être une chemise, mais je dirais que c'est un t-shirt plutôt. Vous avez le monsieur d'ailleurs qui porte un chapeau, d'accord? Un chapeau. Et nous, on a un autre mot pour les chapeaux qui sont comme ça, c'est une casquette, d'accord? Je vais retrouver mon... Je vais faire que ça soit plus grand. Voilà. Alors, une casquette is what I would call what this guy is wearing more than a chapeau. Une casquette is like a ball cap. D'accord? Une casquette. You can say this for other types of hats. I think you can say it for like a roadster cap too. Mais voilà, vous avez une casquette. Et ici, vous avez toutes sortes de chapeaux au mur là. Alors, vous avez 5 chapeaux différents au mur. Ici, qu'est-ce que vous avez encore? Encore un short, très bien. Ici, vous avez des maillots de bain, d'accord? Ici, un maillot, encore un maillot, encore un maillot que la dame porte. Je veux dire, apporte, pardon. Et ici, vous avez un bikini, d'accord? Un bikini. Et voilà. Ici, qu'est-ce que vous avez dans la main du monsieur qui travaille là dans le magasin? Vous avez des baskets, d'accord? Des baskets. Et voilà. On va parler peut-être des couleurs. Ils vous ont donné plein de couleurs ici en bas. Vous avez par exemple ces deux t-shirts là, rouges, d'accord? Ces deux pulls, ou peut-être t-shirts, je sais pas. Bleu ciel, tu pourrais dire. Alors, bleu ciel, vous avez bleu ciel et bleu marine, n'est-ce pas? Et puis bleu tout court, c'est un bleu normal, quoi. So if you say blue on its own, it's just blue. It could be any blue as well. If you want to be a little more specific than bleu ciel, ciel means sky, so you can figure out what color bleu ciel is. And, pardon, bleu marine, vous avez navy blue, d'accord? Alors, qu'est-ce que vous avez d'autre dans l'image? Vous avez des lunettes de soleil, d'accord? Toutes sortes de lunettes d'ailleurs. Ici, le monsieur, qu'est-ce qu'il apporte? Qu'est-ce qu'il porte, pardon? J'arrête pas de confondre les deux mots. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'il porte le monsieur? Une écharpe, d'accord? Une écharpe. Ils n'ont pas de foulard ici dans l'image. Écharpe can mean scarf. It's more a scarf for keeping warm. You have another word for a scarf that you may see later. And we don't have any here in the picture. Mais un foulard. A foulard is a scarf that someone would wear for decoration. Typically women. So this is more of a decorative scarf, whereas an écharpe is more like a muffler or something to keep warm. Now, in France, you have a lot of people who wear scarves all the time. Men and women wear scarves a lot more than we do here. C'est contre les courants d'air. There's a whole culture around avoiding drafts. And so you'll see people walking around the street with a foulard around their neck to keep warm. Even if they don't necessarily think it's warm enough for a coat or a sweater or anything, they'll have a foulard to keep warm. So sometimes a foulard is to keep warm, but une écharpe is specifically made for that, whereas a foulard is more created for decoration. But those big, huge scarves that you see people wearing could be a little bit for warmth. C'est un foulard. D'accord? Voilà. Il y a plein de vocabulaire ici qu'on a sauté, je pense. Hein? Et le monsieur, qu'est-ce qu'il porte ici avec les rayons? Qu'est-ce qu'il porte, le monsieur? Une chemise. Une chemise, d'accord? Et vous avez ici la dame, qu'est-ce qu'elle porte? Une jupe, d'accord? Ici sur la table, vous avez des sandales, n'est-ce pas? Et des chaussures normales, je dirais, d'accord? Des chaussures à talons, so heeled shoes or high heels. These aren't particularly high, but you would still say chaussures à talons. Ici, je dirais même des ballerines. If you are addicted to ballerina flats, I kind of used to be. Those are ballerines. If you go into a shoe store there and you want to find some ballerina flats, ce sont des ballerines. Voilà. Alors vous avez tout ça. On va pratiquer avec des exercices maintenant aussi. Attendez. Voilà. Voilà. Alors, ici, vous avez un exercice. Guillaume prépare ses vacances d'hiver. Choisissez oui ou non pour indiquer quels vêtements il va acheter pour son voyage. D'accord? Vous comprenez? Il prépare ses vacances d'hiver, his winter vacation, n'est-ce pas? Choisissez quels vêtements il va acheter pour son voyage en mettant oui ou non. D'accord? So which of these things is he going to take on his winter vacation? N'est-ce pas? Vous direz qu'il apporterait ses baskets? Oui ou non? Des baskets pour les vacances d'hiver? Oui? Non? Moi je dirais non. D'accord? Probablement pas de basket. Un maillot de bain pour les vacances d'hiver? Winter vacation, n'est-ce pas? Pour les vacances d'hiver? Non, plutôt, n'est-ce pas? À moins qu'il aille dans un au tropique ou quelque chose, n'est-ce pas? Pour les chemises, il va apporter des chemises? Je dirais peut-être oui, peut-être que oui, n'est-ce pas? Un pantalon noir? Pourquoi pas? Pourquoi pas? D'accord? Now note, when you go through this later, we're going from a more logical standpoint, kind of an all-encompassing standpoint. We haven't been told that he's necessarily going to be skiing or anything, so we're going with anything that he might be taking, and we're eliminating things that are really pretty illogical for him to take, n'est-ce pas? Un manteau. Il va apporter un manteau, oui ou non? Vous voyez bien là? Je vais faire que ça soit plus grand. Hein? Voilà, c'est mieux. Alors, un manteau? Oui ou non? Je dirais que oui, d'accord? Un anorak? Pour les vacances d'hiver? Oui, probablement, n'est-ce pas? Un jean? Un jean? Oui, pourquoi pas? Pour l'hiver? Un short? Qu'est-ce que vous direz? Non, n'est-ce pas? Non, pas de short. Un pull? Un pull? Probablement oui, n'est-ce pas? Une robe. Faites attention que ça soit Guillaume, n'est-ce pas? Alors c'est Guillaume qui va peut-être, je sais pas, on ne connaît pas Guillaume très bien, mais le plus logique, c'est non, n'est-ce pas? Voilà. Très bien. Alors, là, ça vous donne une petite idée. Et ce qu'on va faire, c'est de continuer. Les couleurs, n'est-ce pas? Pour les couleurs. Alors là, on n'a plus besoin de ça. Leave. Et ici, pour les couleurs. On va pratiquer pour les couleurs. Et en plus, on va pratiquer pour l'accord. So we'll also be seeing agreement with some of these, n'est-ce pas? I'm going to make it a little bigger. Voilà. Alors, de quelle couleur? Indiquez de quelle couleur sont les choses suivantes. N'est-ce pas? L'océan, par exemple, il est bleu. Ok? La statue de la liberté, elle est verte. N'est-ce pas? Très bien. Le drapeau français. Le drapeau français. Alors, bleu, blanc, rouge, n'est-ce pas? Nous, on va pas faire de phrase complète partout. We're gonna skip the complete sentence requirement. We're just gonna talk about the colors and the agreement. Alors, le drapeau français, c'est bleu, blanc, rouge. D'accord? Alors, normalement, je dirais bleu, blanc et rouge. Ok? In this case, I'm just saying bleu, blanc, rouge because that's how we refer to the drapeau français sometimes. Alors, voilà. Les dollars américains, ils sont verts, je dirais, n'est-ce pas? Vert. And any agreement that you want for masculine plural? What do you think we should put? Un seul S, n'est-ce pas? Ils sont verts. V-E-R-T-S. Les pommes. Alors les pommes, ça peut être de différentes couleurs, n'est-ce pas? These might be different colors depending on what apple you think of first. So we have a couple or three different possibilities. A couple, at least. Vous avez des pommes. Give me a color that you have for apples sometimes. Rouge, peut-être. D'accord? Et les pommes, c'est masculin ou féminin ou singulier ou pluriel. Alors, so we know it's plural. We have an S there. And do you remember if apples are masculine or feminine? Féminin, n'est-ce pas? Les pommes, féminin. In this case, we have an E already at the end of our color. So we're not going to add another E. All we need is our S, n'est-ce pas? Quelles autres sortes de pommes est-ce que vous auriez des fois? What other kinds of colors of apples might you see? Peut-être verte, n'est-ce pas? So I just told you, sorry, the answer. Vous avez verte avec S, d'accord? And maybe even, what other color might you see for apples? Jaune, n'est-ce pas? Et singulier ou pluriel, alors pluriel, vous allez ajouter un S, d'accord? Alors rouge ou verte ou jaune, jaune, pardon. Alors ou jaune, n'est-ce pas? Rouge ou verte ou jaune. D'accord? En fait, c'est un peu plus clair comme ça, n'est-ce pas? Voilà. Le soleil. Alors, vous avez de différents choix aussi pour le soleil. You might have different possibilities for the sun too, right? So we have singular, masculine. So we know we're going to be clear about agreement. Alors, normalement, jaune, n'est-ce pas? Normally, yellow. Ou, des fois, sometimes, what's the sun look like other times? Orange, peut-être. Quoi d'autre? Vous avez d'autres possibilités? Peut-être même rouge, maybe red sometimes, n'est-ce pas? Alors, tous les trois. La nuit, qu'est-ce que vous direz pour la nuit? Là aussi, ça dépend du perspective, n'est-ce pas? Alors, you might have lots of different possibilities for this. What we mostly think of first for night? Black, d'accord? Alors, noir. Et c'est féminin singulier, alors qu'est-ce que vous allez ajouter? For feminine singular, what do I need? An E, n'est-ce pas? And just for the sake of getting on with all of our stuff, we're going to go ahead, even though we probably have other possibilities for night. Qu'est-ce que vous diriez pour le zèbre? This is a pretty big cognate. You should be able to figure out what animal this is. Le zèbre, d'accord? Il est noir et blanc, n'est-ce pas? Et vous avez masculin singulier, so do I need any agreement for masculine singular? Non, n'est-ce pas? Noir et blanc. D'accord? La neige. Alors ça aussi, ça dépend du perspective. Surtout si vous regardez un tableau impressionniste ou quelque chose comme ça. But what would we normally say for la neige? Blanc, n'est-ce pas? Vous avez singulier, féminin singulier. So feminine singular, what do I need to add? Elle est blanche. So white, when it goes to feminine, I'm actually changing it to CH and I'm adding my E. Blanche. Les oranges. Alors normalement, vous avez orange. D'accord? Vous allez ajouter de l'accord. I actually forgot to see if they tell you about this with colors. There are a couple of colors that don't take agreement, and orange is normally one of them. Voila. Okay, good. I couldn't remember if they had told you that or not, so. Orange is an adjective that never agrees. It just stays singular, if you will, regardless of what you do. Now, you have a little rule for this. It's that generally colors that are based on an object. So orange, how did we get the word orange? From oranges, right? Orange. Normally that's your safest guideline with these, is that if they're based on an object, they don't take any agreement. Now, marron is going to be harder to remember. In your little note here on 241, you have marron as another one of these. The marron is not going to change either, d'accord? Marron is a brownish red color, sometimes just used for brown, period. It's based on chestnuts, d'accord? It's the word for chestnut. So usually it's colors that are based on some kind of a noun. So orange doesn't change, marron doesn't change. There are a few others that you'll find down the line that don't change. Le café, qu'est-ce que vous allez dire pour le café? Alors, peut-être noir. And we know it's masculine singular, so do I need agreement? No, n'est-ce pas? What if I put cream in it? Vous avez beige ou quelque chose? We'll just go ahead and use beige. D'accord? So now we know where beige comes from, beige. And you might have other permutations between these two, right? Beige always ends in an E, just like orange and jaune and rouge. Les bananes. So we'll talk about ripe bananas, surtout. Des bananes mûres. Alors, jaune. And it always ends in an E, but here we have feminine plural, so what do I need? Okay, if it already ends in an S, in an E, I don't need my additional E, but I do need my S, n'est-ce pas? Voilà. Alors, vous avez de différentes... Now, if you do this one, I can't remember, frankly, if I assigned this one or not, but you will need to do the complete sentences when you do it for real. And you might go for the most obvious choice for some of these, rather than we were kind of letting a lot of different things in, which is fine too. Alors voilà, on va quitter. Voilà, très bien. Alors, on va aussi continuer. Ici, vous avez, you have your audio activities on WebSam that you can use for this. Just be careful of these spellings, and there is a slight difference between some of these sounds, but for your purposes, just pretend it's all the same. D'accord? Voilà. So I just wanted to mention that. Voilà. Alors, on va parler de la mode. D'accord? Ici, on a la page 247 on 247. I just wanted to underline, you have some pretty cool links if you're interested in French fashion or fashion in general. You have some pretty cool links on the internet if you go here and click on there. And I also wanted to mention that there are 2 or 3 really good movies based on the life of Coco Chanel. One of them is with Audrey Tautou, so that's a pretty good one. Let me pull this up. Alors, Audrey Tautou, who you might know from other movies. And there's another one with Anna Mouglali, I believe. I think her name is spelled that way. That's pretty good also. So those are both really good. And then if you're really into fashion, I just happened a couple of weeks ago to watch Dior and Me. This is on Amazon at the moment. So I think it's on Netflix too. So if you have a membership for either of those places and would like to watch it, it's pretty good. I think I noticed it on a Redbox machine a week or so ago too, so you might be able to get it from there also if you're interested and you don't have Amazon or Netflix. It's a really good movie, and I like it especially for you guys' purposes because it's not scripted. So any movies where it's documentary especially and they're just talking, and they give you subtitles and everything, so don't worry. And actually a little bit of it is in English, but when they're speaking French, they're just talking amongst themselves, taking care of whatever business they have at hand, and that is the best French to be listening to. I mean, it's great to watch movies anyway. The more you watch, the better it's going to help your French. Even if you have a Netflix account and you just turn on a French movie in the background while you're doing work or while you're working on other things even, it can help your French a lot just to have that passive listening. So any of that helps, but if it's something that's not scripted, it helps that much more because it's actually how people talk every day. So it's pretty cool. And it's a good movie. It's about when Ralph Simons took over at Christian Dior. So if you know anything about that. I didn't know anything about it until I watched this movie. So anyway, it's a good movie if you're interested in fashion. Alors, voilà. On va continuer. Commencer avec 6B1. D'accord? So 6B1, we're digging in on indirect object pronouns. So hang on just a second. Voila. So indirect object pronouns are going to express to whom or for whom in relationship to some kind of an action. So an example, just a quick example of a couple of indirect objects. So if I'm going to give the ball to John, for example, I give, d'accord? The ball is the direct object. It's receiving the action of the verb directly, n'est-ce pas? To John is my indirect object. He's receiving that action indirectly, d'accord? So what am I giving? The ball. To whom? To John, d'accord? And this, you can see, we're hearkening back to what they just told you about to whom or for whom, n'est-ce pas? So same idea if we wanted to get a for whom one. Alors, par exemple, Marie makes a cake for her dad. D'accord? So what is she making? She's making a cake. That is receiving the action of the verb directly. Who or what is receiving the action indirectly? Her dad is. D'accord? So for her dad is the indirect object. So if we want to look at these in French, we're not going to play with the directs right now. Alors je donne le ballon à Jean, n'est-ce pas? So if I want to talk about à Jean, that's an indirect object, and we're going to learn in a second what pronoun to use for that. If we're talking about Marie et le gâteau, alors Marie fait un gâteau pour son papa. D'accord. Alors pour son papa, c'est indirect. D'accord. Oh pardon, c'est pas ça que je voulais faire. Voilà. Pour son papa is indirect. Again, what is receiving the action directly? Un gâteau. Qu'est-ce qu'elle fait? Un gâteau. Pour qui? Pour son papa. D'accord? And we learned over here that that's what we're looking for an indirect object. To whom or for whom. D'accord? Alors, on va regarder de plus près dans un moment. I can talk about anybody or anything as an indirect object pronoun or an indirect object. And when I'm talking about someone like that, I'm going to do pronouns a lot. And we haven't done the direct object pronouns yet. We'll be doing those in a few lessons. But you'll find with all of these, what pronouns are doing are streamlining our speech. So instead of going around saying, oh, I gave the ball to John, well, and when did you give the ball to John? I gave the ball to John yesterday. Why did you give the ball to John? Oh, I gave the ball to John because he wanted it, or whatever. I'm having to say a lot, right? To John, to John, to John. But if I shorten it, I'm giving him the ball. D'accord? So you might not think it's shortening it a lot, but it is. It's streamlining our language, making our language a little more natural. And we do this a lot without even thinking about it. We shorten what we're saying all the time. And pronouns are one of the biggest tools that we use for that. So here we have an example too. Gisèle parle à sa mère. So, as I said a minute ago, you have indirect object pronouns that go with every single person or thing that you can refer to. So if I want to say to or for me, correspondent to je is me. To or for you, the correspondent for tu is te. To or for him or her, this is one place where it's cutting you a break. You don't have to worry about gender. So, à elle, à lui, à or pour in conjunction with elle or il, you're going to use lui regardless of gender. To or for us, so the counterpart for nous. Where's my flèche? Elle est où ma petite flèche? Voilà. The counterpart to nous is nous. To or for you plural, vous. The counterpart to vous is vous. These are easy. They often cut us a break, and now they're cutting us a break with pronouns too, right? Oh, pardon. Voilà. Alors, to or for them, again, I don't have to worry about gender. Leur. So leur is my counterpart for il pluriel, elle pluriel. D'accord? Regardless of gender. Indirect object pronouns replace the nouns and the prepositions that precede them. So very much like our example, if I want to say I give the ball to John, in English, I also take out my preposition. I don't need to say it anymore. So I him the ball. D'accord? And I don't need to include my preposition anymore. I don't need to include to. Him is taking care of that. The same thing is going to happen in French. So we just learned what the counterpart for il is. It's lui. So je lui donne le ballon. D'accord? So lui is taking the place of not only Jean, but your preposition. So à Jean is tied up in lui, just like to John was tied up in him. D'accord? Same thing here. We're not going to do the English one because you understand what's happening now. But I'm going to do the French. So Marie, lui, fait un gâteau. Oh, voilà. Fait un gâteau. D'accord? Lui. So even though we have this big long phrase, pour son papa, it's all tied up in lui, because lui is taking the place of the person or thing receiving the action, and it's taking the place of the preposition, so we no longer need the preposition. Just like we did in English, I give him the ball, or she makes him a cake. D'accord? I don't need to write the English, I think. I think you guys are okay. Alors, voilà. Ici, vous avez d'autres exemples. Gisèle parle à sa mère. So again, I have elle, right? The counterpart for elle is going to be lui. And if you want to have your book open to that chart, you could do that while we go through this so that you have your chart handy. Alors, Gisèle parle à sa mère. Gisèle lui parle. Lui is taking the place of à sa mère, n'est-ce pas? J'envoie des cadeaux à mes nièces. Alors, je leur envoie des cadeaux. Leur is taking the place of mes nièces and the à. D'accord? Vous m'avez apporté des cadeaux. je te prête ma jupe, etc. Ici, me is taking the place of à moi. D'accord? They've already done it for you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm always going to be answering a question or something. I'm not always going to hear a model. I might just jump straight to this lui usage in a sentence or in a conversation without any kind of precursor, without any modeling having already taken place in the sentence or in the conversation, I mean. So it's something that we're going to be doing subconsciously as we get more and more comfortable with French, just like we do in English. D'accord? Alors, vous m'avez apporté des cadeaux. I could say, vous avez apporté des cadeaux pour moi, n'est-ce pas? And this pour moi is taken up in this me. D'accord? Me is going to drop the E before a vowel, just like le and te and je and all kinds of other little words that you've had so far where you drop the E muet in front of a vowel. Je te prête ma jupe, d'accord? So je prête ma jupe à toi, n'est-ce pas? So à toi is tied up in te. D'accord? And we'll get to that à toi thing in a second too. Voila. The indirect object pronoun precedes the conjugated verb, usually. D'accord? So this is something that I'll kind of be really driving home once we get direct object pronouns under our belts as well. If there's an infinitive, we're going to talk about infinitives in a second. If there's an infinitive, infinitives take precedence over the conjugated verb. If there's no infinitive, then go for the conjugated verb. And if you have trouble figuring out what the conjugated verb is, look at the verb that is going to change, probably, if I change the subject. Okay? Think about which verb is in play. D'accord? So here I have parler. Antoine, je te parle. And parler is my conjugated verb, right? Te is going right in front of parler, because parler is my active or conjugated verb. Notre père nous a envoyé un email. So here we have passé composé with avoir, which we just looked at, right? What's the conjugated verb here? Avoir, n'est-ce pas? Ma petite flèche, elle continue à disparaître. Pardon. Voilà. So here I'm putting it right in front of avoir, because avoir is my conjugated verb. It's the verb that is in play. This past participle is just sitting there, right? It's not in play. In a negative statement, keep the pronoun and the verb together. D'accord? Now you can think of it this way if this helps you. Place the indirect object pronoun between ne and the conjugated verb. I think it's easier to just tell yourself that you're always going to keep the conjugated verb and your pronoun together. D'accord? So here's an example. Ici, vous aviez, je lui donne le ballon. So now, as soon as this lui is here, this is a unit. Okay? You're going to keep this together no matter what. So if I'm making a negative, I'm going to treat this whole thing as the verb. If I'm making a question, I'm going to treat this whole thing as a verb. So we'll be talking about this a lot when we get to direct object pronouns too. So if I'm going to keep that all together, what do I end up with for my negative? I'm going to put ne pas around the whole thing. D'accord? D'accord? Je ne lui donne pas le ballon. And I'm keeping this together as a unit. D'accord? Même chose ici. Vous avez Marie avec son gâteau. I have lui fait. Pardon. Attends. Voilà. Lui fait. Qui, maintenant, for all intents and purposes now, this is my verb. Okay? I'm going to keep it together no matter what. I'm just going to take up some space here so we have a little more room. So what do I do with a negative? Marie ne lui fait pas de gâteau. D'accord? Don't worry about the de. If you don't remember how to do your and de change, go review it if you like, or email me and I can help you find where to go review it. But for now, don't fixate on that. Look at what's happening with ne pas. Ne pas is around lui fait, because I'm treating lui fait as my entire verb now. D'accord? So as soon as one of these pronouns is in front of your conjugated verb or in front of your infinitive, keep it there. D'accord? So I could do the same thing with the infinitive. What if I change this? What if I'm not giving it to him now? What if I'm going to give it to him? Alors, je vais donner... I'm not going to do the model. Je vais lui donner le ballon. D'accord? Now, same principle applies. I'm going to keep lui with the verb that it has to do with. D'accord? So if you think about it, what verb is lui receiving action from? Donner. D'accord? Same thing here. Donner. So I'm going to keep those two together. If I want to make the negative, I do the negative like I always have. I'm putting it around the conjugated verb. N'est-ce pas? And I'm keeping my lui donner together because it doesn't have to do anything with the negative now. D'accord? Voilà. Alors, on va continuer un tout petit peu. When an infinitive follows conjugated verb, the indirect object pronoun goes with the infinitive or precedes the infinitive. So we just saw this with our example with Marie and Jean. D'accord? Nous allons lui donner une cravate. Il espère vous prêter le costume. D'accord? Now think about these more specifically. The reason they're going with the infinitive is because the infinitive is the verb that is most closely related to this person, right? Going doesn't have anything to do with him. Giving is directly related to him. D'accord? We're going to give him a tie. Nous allons lui donner une cravate. So the pronoun is going directly in front of the verb that it is most closely related to. D'accord? Or related with. Il espère vous prêter le costume. Same thing. Hoping doesn't have anything to do with you, right? What is he hoping? He's hoping to lend. Who is he hoping to lend something? Vous. D'accord? So, vous is more directly related to prêter than espérer. D'accord? So put it with the verb that it is most closely related to. Il espère vous prêter le costume. D'accord? In the passé composé, the indirect object pronoun comes before the auxiliary verb. Now we just looked at this, and I said that it's going to go in front of the conjugated verb if there's no infinitive, right? It's still going with the verb that it has to do with, because now my whole verb is à parler, right? À is just showing time, a new time frame for parler, d'accord? This is going to stay in front of the conjugated verb. So, tu lui as parlé, d'accord? And then keep it there, no matter what you do to it later. If I'm making it negative in passé composé, I'm going to keep my lui and my avoir together. Je ne lui ai pas parlé. Sorry, I'm yawning. I always yawn on these. So, let's look at another example. Je lui donne le ballon. So, what if I'm not going to do it? What if I already did it? D'accord? Alors, je lui ai donné le ballon. D'accord? Et j'ai pas fait mon majuscule comme il faut. Très bien. So here, remember how I said this stays together no matter what I do? Now, this is going to stay together. D'accord? So how do I usually make a negative in passé composé? I usually use ne pas around my conjugated verb, around my auxiliary, around avoir. However of those ways you want to think about it, or it's easiest to think about it. Now I'm going to do it to the whole verb, which includes lui now. Je ne lui ai pas donné le ballon. D'accord? So this thing is still staying together. Okay? And ne pas is going around the conjugated verb like it always does. The same rules as ever, except that now I have another little part that I'm adding into my key verb or my conjugated verb, however you want to think of it. D'accord? Voilà. Alors, indirect object pronouns me and te drop their e before a vowel. D'accord? We talked about this a minute ago in passing. So just like with je and ne and de and que and all kinds of other little verbs or little words that you've had that have an muet, what we call a mute e. This is an e without any kind of accent. D'accord? We're going to drop those in front of a vowel. just like we always have. So, ton petit ami t'envoie des emails and not te envoie, n'est-ce pas? M'a-t-il acheté ce pull? Me a-t-il acheté ce pull, n'est-ce pas? So, what I used to tell everybody was just always be careful. If you're looking over your work, look for any place that you have two vowels next to each other. You're almost always going to have to do something special if you have two vowels next to each other. A lot of the time, I'm dropping an E. Other times, I'm changing something so that it's easier to say a different way. Sometimes I'm adding something, like you may remember from inversion questions. But just always have your antenna up for two vowels next to each other, because you're virtually always going to have to do something extra. Here, I'm dropping my E and adding an apostrophe. D'accord? Voilà. So we're going to look at disjunctives in a minute. First, I want to practice a little bit with the ones that we just looked at. So, attendez. We don't need this open anymore. Voilà. So here's a pretty simple exercise. They give you all the choices. We're going to look at our model and figure out what we're going to use to replace the indirect object pronoun, or the indirect object, I mean. So remember, I'm using parler. I'm replacing not only the indirect object, but my preposition, right? Je parle à ma sœur. Now all I need is a pronoun. Do you remember which one we need for elle? Lui. D'accord? Je lui parle. Jacques montre sa voiture à sa copine. So again, we have à sa copine. We're going to replace not only the indirect object, but the preposition. Sa copine is elle, singulier, encore. Which one do I need for elle singulier? Jacques lui montre. D'accord? Sophie apporte un gâteau à ses parents. So here we have a plural indirect object. I still have a. I'm going to use one word to replace all of that with my indirect object pronoun. À ses parents. So you might be tempted to say les, right? But it's not. Do you remember what it is? Leur. D'accord? C'est très bien. Paul donne le cahier à ma mère. D'accord? So ma mère is still elle. Don't let the possessive throw you, right? If I'm thinking of my mother, it's still her or she. So elle on our 3x3 chart for our pronouns. And I'm going to replace the a as well. So elle singulier, we've had a lot of these. Oui. Est-ce que tu me donnes les livres? Oui, je. Now this one is reciprocal. So I'm basically just mirroring back each part of the sentence, right? Except I'm changing the people involved. Okay? So this one I'm asking in second person, are you giving me the books, right? Yes, I'm giving you the books, right? So how am I going to say you instead of me? So the counterpart for me, but we're now talking about tu. Te. D'accord? Je te donne les livres. Il écrit une lettre à nous. What's my counterpart for nous plus my indirect object, my indirect preposition? So, nous. Il nous écrit une lettre. D'accord? Il nous écrit une lettre. They're missing some accents on this, so be aware of that. Ma mère offre du café. I'm missing one here too. À ses invités. So pretend this has an accent on it. À ses invités. Ses invités, if I think about je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle, that's the best way to stop and think, what does this correspond to? So this corresponds to il, elle, pluriel, n'est-ce pas? Qu'est-ce que vous me donnez pour le pronom? Alors, leur. Très bien. C'est très bien. Alors, tous les week-ends, je téléphone à toi. So now I'm going to just make it less wordy, but I'm talking to the same person and I'm referring to the same person with my pronoun. What do I use as a counterpart to à toi? Je te téléphone, n'est-ce pas? Tu m'aimes? Oui, je. So this is kind of like the one that we had a minute ago when you were giving something to someone. I'm using the counterpart for each one, right? You love me? Yes, I love you. What's my counterpart for me when I'm talking about tu? Te. n'est-ce pas? Je t'aime. Il parle toujours à vous, d'accord? So my counterpart for à vous, il vous parle toujours. Outstanding! We rock. Basically, we rock. So that's very good that we rock. It would be sad if we didn't rock on those. Alors, voilà. Let's do this one too, just quickly. This is the same kind of idea. Oh, except actually I want to do one out of the book too. So let's go back to the book and we'll practice out of the book. There were one or two that I did want to do out of here. So this one, I really don't like it when they have you translating. So if that helps you, yay. But please don't get fixated on the translation, okay? Let's look at this one instead. This is on 250, exercise 1. This is having you do the same thing as it did in the essayer, except that we're not fixating on English the whole time. So, compléter. Voilà. Alors, compléter, look at who they want you to refer to in each case. D'accord? And they're using the preposition so that you can get used to watching for those as well. And then look at the people and think about your 3x3 chart for your pronouns that you use with all your verbs and everything, right? Je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle. And when you get stuck, stop and think, who does this person or this group of people correspond to on my chart? And then you can think about what pronoun to put. So, à mes cousins, je, qu'est-ce que vous me donnez? Alors, so if you need to, have your book in front of you on page 248 or 249 so that you can have those pronouns in front of you. And what am I going to use to correspond to à mes cousins? Je leur achète des baskets. D'accord? So in this case, you could think pour mes cousins too. I'm buying baskets. I'm buying tennis shoes for my cousins. D'accord? Oh, that is a very annoying toy. Just a moment. I'm going to continue making noise with this toy. I think I should put it up for a little bit, okay? You can get it after a bit. Oops, I just made it tweet. That's one of the cats. He is having fun with the bird, but he cannot do that any longer. It's too distracting. So he's racing around without a bird now. Okay. Je leur achète des baskets. Numéro 2. À toi, Célia. D'accord? So it really doesn't matter that this is a feminine, but they're making it a little clearer this way as to who you're talking to. D'accord? But what's my correspondent for toi? Look on your chart. Tu. D'accord? Alors je te prends une ceinture, pardon. Nous, à notre copine Christelle. So we're buying somebody a skirt. Nous, lui, achetons une jupe. D'accord? Numéro 4. Célia prend des lunettes de soleil à ma mère et à moi. D'accord? So think about any group that has moi in it is what? Nous. D'accord? Any group that has moi is basically a plural first person, so nous. So à ma mère et à moi, à nous, or I can take off my preposition. Célia nous prend des lunettes de soleil. She's getting us some sunglasses. Numéro 5, je, à ta mère et à toi, Célia. D'accord? So Célia bought us some sunglasses. I'm going to buy her and her mother some gloves. Alors, je. So any group that includes toi is vous. D'accord? Alors vous achète des gants. Célia à moi cette fois. So what's my counterpart for moi? Célia. So if you go by your chart, you have me, and then look what we have. We have a vowel right away. What do I do with two vowels next to each other if me or te are involved? Me, M apostrophe, n'est-ce pas? M apostrophe. Et, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't make this one bigger for you. There we go. Et c'est l'anniversaire de Magali demain. Tu penses à elle, j'espère. D'accord? This one, strictly speaking, isn't an indirect, it's a disjunctive, which we haven't looked at yet. We'll look at in a moment. D'accord? So disregard that one for just a second. We don't really need to save these. Voila. Oh, look. We got it all right. Alors, so we are going to keep going with our little presentation. Now we're going to talk about a different kind of pronoun. Disjunctive pronouns. Disjunctive pronouns are usually kind of an indirect also, right? They often have something else involved, another preposition or something, but they can be used alone. So disjunctives are used to answer one-word questions, like I always used to use the example of the little red hens. The little red hen goes around asking who all is going to help her plant her wheat, and everybody's like, "Not I," said the "Not I," said the dog, "Not I," said the cat. Da 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 da. And then when her wheat is all ready and she makes the bread, and then all these steps, nobody has helped her, and then she says, "Oh, well, who wants some bread?" "Moi, moi, moi," and everybody wants bread, but they can't have it because they didn't help. So this is the same idea. If I'm answering with just a one-word or two-word question, two-word answer to talk about who or what, n'est-ce pas? Qui prend du café? Moi. D'accord? Now, if I wanted to say not me, I could say the same thing, pas moi. D'accord? And they'll probably show you that in a second too. If I want, I can put aussi with these. Moi aussi, toi aussi, eux aussi. D'accord? And again, you have your chart in the book, so please refer to that so that you have your examples of your counterpart for each pronoun, subject pronoun. Je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle. So if you're looking in the book, you have the counterpart to je ici, moi, and the counterpart for il pluriel, eux. So with the disjunctives, I do have to pay attention to gender for my plurals and for my third person. So I have a different gender for il et elle, singulier, a different pronoun, and I have different disjunctive pronouns for the plurals, il et elle aussi. D'accord? So look closely at your chart. I don't think we need to go through those necessarily together. So disjunctive pronouns can be used for emphasis. This kind of emphasis in English we tend to do with tone. So if I say, well, these, for example, I often wear a cap. In English, I'm going to do it with tone. I can say me, I often wear a cap, but it's a little weird, right? So in French, I'm going to, instead of using tone, I still might change my tone, but moi is really how I'm making emphasis here. Moi, je porte souvent une casquette. D'accord? Mon frère, lui, il déteste les casquettes. So I'm using lui, I'm literally referring to the person twice in order to emphasize who I'm talking about. Whereas in English, I would say, my brother hates caps, and that's going to emphasize it, right? If I want to say ourselves, myself, yourself, etc., I use même, and I'm going to add an S for plurals. This is not to say that you're always going to use a même if you're talking this way. A lot of the time, a disjunctive already has that self idea in it. So, tu fais ça toi-même, you're doing that yourself, and I'm emphasizing it, emphasizing that the person's doing it themselves. D'accord? Ah, you're doing that by yourself? Are you doing that on your own? You're doing that yourself? You're capable of doing that? Etc. Alors, l'autre, ils organisent la fête eux-mêmes. They're organizing the party themselves. D'accord? And it's stressing the fact that they're doing it on their own. In the case of some of these, you may actually use a still with the disjunctive. Okay? So you have a lot of verbs that take a. One of them is penser à. So am I thinking about someone? Il pense souvent à ses grands-parents. Oui, il pense souvent à eux. D'accord? Penser à is one thing where I can't use an indirect object pronoun. I have to use the disjunctive. One way to think about this is that in this case, a has a little more meaning than just to. So if a is doing a bigger job than normal, you're often going to need a disjunctive. Some of these is just going to be a case of getting used to hearing them a certain way and knowing which ones take disjunctives and which ones you can go ahead and use an indirect object pronoun with. D'accord? Alors, continuons. Et voilà. Et puis, on va continuer à pratiquer avec les disjoints. So here I have disjunctives. Another way that they didn't tell you before in the presentation that used disjunctives. So we talked about a couple different uses, right? We talked about using them for emphasis. We talked about using them with one or two word answers. Who likes wine? Moi. Who hates spinach? Toi, etc. If you want to say me too or not me, etc., all of those you can use disjunctive. And then they told you that you can use them with a if you want to emphasize something, or if you want to use a pronoun in a case where you can't use an indirect, right? Another case of using disjunctives is with prepositions. D'accord? So instead of saying Pierre va avec Marc, I can say il va avec lui. And it just shortens it a little bit. D'accord? So that's another use for disjunctives, is with prepositions. Here we have some good examples. Elle va avec Mathieu et Philippe au cinéma. So what's my disjunctive for Mathieu et Philippe? Eux, n'est-ce pas? Vous avez tous les choix, alors elle va avec eux. Les livres sont pour toi et Marie. Les livres sont pour, what group always includes toi? Vous, n'est-ce pas? Je pense à Caroline et à sa mère. D'accord? Je pense à Caroline et à sa mère. Je pense à. So third person, plural, but it's feminine this time. Do you need to make that clear with your disjunctive? Yes, you do. Okay? Now these L's and E, the L and E work the same way as you've always done those third person plurals, right? If you have a solely feminine group, you're going to opt for the feminine. If you have, 50 women and one guy, then you're going to opt for the masculine. So a mixed group or solely masculine group, you're going to use the masculine. If it's solely feminine, you can use the feminine. Il vient avec Yves et moi à la piscine. Il vient avec. Alors, Yves et moi, what group always includes moi? Nous. N'est-ce pas? Très bien. I'm not going to do the correction because I know we got it all right. Except it might praise us. Let's see if it praises us. Bravo! C'est très bien. It's fun to get praise. You should take advantage of that as much as you can in life in general, n'est-ce pas? Il y avait un exercice encore que je voulais faire pour les disjoints. Just let me look for 1 second. There was one other one that I wanted us to do. Attends. Maybe that was it. I think that was it. I had found one other activity. Well, this one is just with your indirects. So we're pretty much done with what we were going to look at today. If you want to end the activity now, you may. But those of you who'd like to stay and practice, then we have this activity also. This is with indirect object pronouns, and it's just lui and leur, so it's just helping you keep these two straight. À Pierre, il. So think of Pierre is singular. Which one do I need? Lui, n'est-ce pas? D'accord? Ses enfants, and each of these two we can see if we did it right. Très bien! À ses enfants, elle. So, à ses enfants, up here, all we're dealing with is singular or plural, so leur. Il n'y a rien de plus simple. Leur. D'accord? Nous, à notre professeur, posons souvent des questions. Alors nous, singular, lui, posons souvent des questions. And stop and really look at each of these. How does it correspond to à Pierre? Singular, third person, right? Here, third person plural, à ses enfants. nous, à notre professeur, third person singular, d'accord? Ici, il, à elle, third person singular, alors lui, il lui offre des cadeaux. Vous, aux clientes, n'est-ce pas? Alors, third person plural, vous leur dites ce qu'elles veulent entendre. Je à mon mari, d'accord? Third person singular, lui. D'accord? So don't forget, these, we're going back to the indirects, so now I don't have to worry about gender anymore. I can just worry about singular or plural, right? When we were using the disjunctives, we had to stop and think about gender too. But here we don't have to. So you're set all the way through. Il lui demande souvent d'argent, elle leur donne beaucoup d'amour, etc. D'accord? Voilà. On va voir ce qu'elle nous fait pour les réponses. Nothing happens. Oh well, we could do each of these and it would just tell us, oh, bravo! Très bien! Super! Super! Très bien! Voilà. C'est très bien. Alors, there was a video I wanted to do, but this is pretty long already, so help me remember and we'll do it separately, or we'll maybe start next week's lesson with it so that we can have a little review on the indirects. But look at your book very carefully, especially the pages where they have the charts for you. Attends. Voila. So here they have your indirects, right? And for the disjunctives, did they give you a chart for the disjunctives? They don't give you a chart for the disjunctives. You can go to texts, which we practiced on before, and look at the disjunctives if you like. I'm pretty sure they have a chart for the disjunctives on text, so let's look real quickly. Alors, pronoms, disjunctives. There we go. You have your 3x3 chart, right? Voilà. Alors, moi, toi, lui, elle, soi. Don't need to worry about soi for the moment. Voilà. Et puis, nous, vous, eux, elles. D'accord? And this gives you a good review too of when you use these. So after prepositions, for emphasis, with c'est or ce sont, with même, d'accord? With que, and with one word answers, which I think they'll have an example of down here. So if you want to do this activity, you can. Voilà. Très bien. Alors, ça suffit pour aujourd'hui. Faites attention à votre WebSam. I'll be setting up those activities today if I haven't already by the time you see this. And please do keep in contact with me. There are a few of you who are emailing me regularly. Please join the club. Any questions at all that you have or any problems, please let me know. And please try to come to office hours if you can, or to the class session, and I can go over anything you like. We can go over those together. If you come to office hours, we can always open up a Blackboard Collaborate classroom and go in there and work on things. Or of course, we can just work on things together via Skype. So keep all those options in mind and let me know anything at all that you might need. Voilà. Alors, bonne soirée. À tout à l'heure. Salut.